Hello, my name is Adam Chire, and today I'll be speaking about the rise of conversational AI. As background, I was co-creator of Siri, the voice assistant in many Apple devices. I created Viv Labs, which sold to Samsung and powers their conversational AI. And I was the founders of one of the first large-scale machine learning cloud platforms called Sentient back in 2009. So this is a slide that I put together many, many years ago. And one thing that I realized was that every 10 plus years, a new paradigm for how we interact with computers emerges. So in about 1984, Windows and the mouse was the major paradigm, and that's how we would interact with a computer on our desk. 10 plus 1 years later, in about 1995, the web came about with browsers and hyperlinks and multimedia documents. 10 plus 2 years later, about 2007, we arrived at the mobile phone with apps. And in the following year after that, 2008, an app store so anyone could contribute to the mobile interface. And so my prediction for many years has been that in about 2021, a new paradigm for interaction would emerge, as important as the web, as important as mobile. And this would be the conversational assistant, an assistant you could talk to ask it questions and have you do things. And as you may have heard, technologies like ChatGPT, generative AI, large language models really have been coming out into existence in 2020, 2021, 2022. So today we have reached the age of the assistant, the conversational AI, as a paradigm as important as the web. And in the past, for each paradigm, there was a major company like Microsoft for the desktop PC, web, there was maybe Google, Apple, and Samsung for mobile. So today there's a big battle about who will be the major provider for this new type of conversational AI. So this is an old slide. And how did we get from mobile to the conversational assistant? I'm going to tell you my story and some of the exciting developments in AI that have been happening in the last 10 or 15 years. So since it's my story, I will start with Siri. In February 2010, Siri was an app in the App Store. We were a small team of about 20 people. We launched a free app in the App Store. And with this application, you could just talk to your phone and say, Siri, get me a cab, or Siri, make me dinner reservations tomorrow night at 7:30 for 6 people. And this system would not only talk with you, it would accomplish tasks. We call this a do engine. We would say, if you want to go to a web page, go to a search engine. If you want to get something done, go to Siri. Now, when we launched the app, many people started downloading it, including this person. His name is Steve Wozniak, and he's well known as the founder of Apple. He created Apple, the co-founder. And if you ask him today, what's your favorite app of all time? He'll say Siri, not the Siri that's in the phone, but the original app. And as a creator, as an entrepreneur, this is something that makes me so happy. But many people downloaded it, not just Steve Wozniak. There was at least one other Steve who downloaded it. One day we were at our office working away, and our phone rings, and we hear a voice. This is Steve Jobs, the other co-founder of Apple. And he said, hey, it's Steve. What are you doing? Want to come over to my house tomorrow? And the idea of starting a company and having the CEO of Apple call you without expecting it. It was such a magical moment for me as an entrepreneur. So we went over to Steve's house. We said, hey, we talked about the future. We talked about technology. And at the end, he said, I'd like to buy your company. And we said, thank you. We're flattered. Not interested. Goodbye. And we left. We walked out of his house. But Steve Jobs, as a businessman, was very persistent. He called 30 days in a row. Every single day he called. And in the end, we decided that we could change the world more with Apple than without. So we agreed to sell our company, our little startup, to Apple. And then we started working on the version of Siri that is now in many iPhones today. Now, Steve Jobs is famous for having reinvented entire fields. When he first brought the mouse and Windows to the world with the Macintosh, he didn't invent the mouse, but he knew it was time to bring it to the world. He didn't invent digital movies as CEO of Pixar, but he knew it was time and he brought this to the world. He did this with mobile on the App Store. He did this with music and transformed how music is consumed. But one thing people don't realize, you can argue that Steve Jobs was actually the first person to see artificial intelligence as a coming trend. In February 2010, after Apple had agreed to acquire Siri, he spoke at a conference called All Things Digital, where Walt Mossberg asked him the question, why did you buy Siri, that search company? And I thought his response was very telling. He said, Siri is not a search company, they're an AI company. And no one knew what he meant. In 2010, artificial intelligence was not something people were talking about. And in fact, really, those words hadn't been used in the press for 20 years, since the 80s. But Steve Jobs saw this coming, and like a drip, drip, drip of a dam breaking and the water rushing out, all of a sudden, artificial intelligence was everywhere. So in January 2011, IBM came out with a program called Watson. Watson played on a game show against the best human players of this game. And if you don't know the game, the idea is that the game person reveals questions that are hard to answer in English, and the respondents have to use all of their cultural knowledge to come back and come up with the response. So for me, I thought, man, this is something that is so hard to understand all of the language and all of the cultural knowledge. A computer will never be able to do it. And yet here, IBM Watson beat two of the best players in the world, including Ken Jennings, who was the champion of champions. And that was something that really, really amazed me. Let's give another example, October 2011. So we had been working hard for 18 months. We made a new version of Siri that now was going to be embedded inside of every iPhone 4S device. If you bought an iPhone 4S, the S stood for Siri, and you would have Siri on your phone. This was the original advertising that we had. And as a result of this, the next 6 months were the best quarters in technology history. So Apple broke every record in terms of sales and profits and profit margins. And at the time, just selling artificial intelligence, Apple became the most valuable company in the world, and in fact, in the history of the world. So this little AI feature that we created propelled a company to be one of the biggest and most successful companies in history. Here's a story about how AI entered my life. I have a son, and in 2015, he was 15 years old, 15 or 16. And I don't know if it's the same in Japan, but in the United States, when you're a teenager, you're bored with everything. So I was driving my wife's car, and I said to my son, I turned and said, "Hey, Noah, would you like to see the greatest technology advance since Siri?" Which in our household is a big, big statement. But he's bored. So he's like, "Yeah, Dad, sure, whatever." And so I'm driving the car, and we're coming up to a curve, and I just lift my hands up like this. And then by itself, the car turned around the corner. And my son was like, "Dad, that's insane." And I'm like, "Yes, it is." And the craziest part was that yesterday, the car did not do this. This was an over-the-air update. It just blew my mind that you could add artificial intelligence as a download, and now the car would drive by itself. Crazy, crazy story for me. We're moving through the timeline of AI after AI after AI. It all started with Siri. In 2016, there was a program called AlphaGo. AlphaGo was produced and made by a company called DeepMind that Google had acquired. And it was a program that would play the game of Go at a very high level. Now, in 1996, IBM had beat the world chess champion, but it did it using brute force. They wrote a computer program that would look at every single possible move, and then the response, and then the response, and then the response. And by looking at billions of moves, it could make the best move. But Go is such a larger space of possibilities. There's so many combinatoric possibilities. People thought that you could not apply brute force to Go, and that Go would not be solved, would not play at a competition level for decades. And yet in 2016, a program beat Lee Sedol, one of the best Go players in the world. And I think the score was 4 games for AlphaGo, 2 games for Lee Sedol. So it was a decisive victory. The craziest part of this example was that AlphaGo was a program that had learned how to play Go by studying all of the best human games. So it watched humans play each other, and it learned Go by, these are the best moves, these are the best strategies to apply. But then DeepMind made a version of AlphaGo called AlphaGo Zero. AlphaGo Zero knew nothing about Go. It just knew the rules, but it had no strategy. It had no idea what a good move was or what a bad move was. But what DeepMind did was they took 2 copies of the program and they played it against each other, back and forth, millions and millions and millions of times. And the crazy part is this was a program that had never learned how humans approach Go. Rather, they created almost an alien intelligence that no human could understand. And it had no knowledge of human intelligence. It was its own intelligence. AlphaGo Zero never played against a human. However, it did play against the original AlphaGo program that had beaten Lee Sedol. And AlphaGo Zero, with its new alien intelligence, beat AlphaGo 100 games to 0. It was crazy. This is something that just I never thought I would see in my lifetime. Superhuman capabilities growing on its own without any human intervention. In 2017, AI started to be applied in medical uses, especially in cancer. So in one study, there was MIT, Harvard, and Mass General Hospital worked together to start to look at breast cancer. and to be able to diagnose if a lesion was benign and safe or cancerous. Very difficult task. And even human doctors make mistakes. And it was found that a doctor plus an AI working together could produce a 30% more accurate result than just a human doctor alone. So artificial intelligence could augment humans' ability to do a task and improve results that would save lives, that would save money, that would reduce trauma in many cases. And another study in this year looked forward and using just a normal mammogram image was able to predict with more than 90% accuracy whether someone would get breast cancer 5 years from now or more. And that had never been done before. So that was an application that I think artificial intelligence really excels at. It's helping a human achieve their skills more successfully. And now we're getting to GPT and ChatGPT. In June 2020, perhaps the most surprising technology advance that I've ever seen happened. A company called OpenAI came out with something called GPT-3. Now, what is GPT-3 and what does it stand for? So in essence, GPT-3 and ChatGPT and all of the others in this area, they predict text. If I give a sentence, John hit the question is, what's the next word? And there's probabilities. Maybe ball is very popular. Wall is a little bit less probable, and so on all the way down the line. Penguin, probably way, way down. And with this, the language technology could predict a word, and then the next word, and then the next word after that. So with this simple idea of trying to predict the next word, GPT got very good at being used for all sorts of applications. And we'll talk about some of those applications in just a moment. Now, one thing to know about this technology is that the goal of GPT is not necessarily to always tell the truth. The focus is to generate entertaining and useful text. And researchers found that if you always choose the most probable result, John hit the ball every time, then what you get is kind of a boring text. It's not very interesting. It's not very rich. And you actually achieve better results if you change the temperature parameter. And the temperature parameter says if you move it lower, means some % of the time. So usually you'll choose the most probable word, but sometimes you'll choose a less probable word, and so on. And by doing that, you'll actually result in better predictions, better text. However, it's important to know this technology is not always trying to choose the best or most accurate answer. It's trying to choose an entertaining answer. It's trying to write a story that it thinks you will enjoy. Now, what can you use this for? Well, you can use it for a lot. And this is what surprised me. In all of the other application areas, these were all examples of narrow AI. Even though they were amazing, the AlphaGo program that could play Go couldn't play chess or checkers. Tesla could drive a car, but it didn't know how to play Jeopardy, right? Everything was created for very narrow areas. But for the first time, GPT could be used in so many different areas, anything that would take text input and text output. So let's look at question answering as just one of many areas. Basically, you can ask a question and say, what's your prediction? Generate new words. So I typed in, what is your favorite animal? And it came back, my favorite animal is a dog. Now this was pretty good, but it didn't impress me that much. Because that's very standard. You could imagine you don't need to understand very much. I asked why? Because dogs are loyal and friendly. It's a good answer. Then I said, how many legs does a dog have? And the system said, dogs have 4 legs. I said, are there any animals with 3 legs? And the answer was no, there are no animals with 3 legs. Now, that's not exactly true, but I understand where it's coming from. I asked, why don't animals have 3 legs? And it said, animals don't have 3 legs because they would fall over. And there I was like, what? Did it just learn physics? Does it know about gravity? This is a phrase that no one would write down on a piece of paper. We know how things work, but we don't write down the obvious common sense things that everyone already knows. So how did GPT understand enough to produce this answer? I was very surprised. Another example was coding. So could you actually write code? Here's an example. I type in English, a button that looks like a watermelon, and GPT produces this image, a button for every color of the rainbow. GPT is writing a program that produces the correct results. A table of the richest countries in the world with the column's name, and here it is. It is writing programs. I was very surprised by that. And now, additionally, we've seen that there are many applications that take text in and text out. Translation, I say it in English, let me get it in Japanese. Summarization, here's a lot of text, make a summary, a shorter version. All of these applications can be done. But it turns out the same algorithm called reinforcement learning can be used to take text in and generate images, generate video. Now, I think what it can do is amazing. It has an imagination almost as powerful as a human. Think about this sentence. If I asked you to imagine in your mind an astronaut riding a horse as a pencil drawing, do you have a picture in your mind? This is pretty good. And if you think about it, we've probably never seen an astronaut on a horse before. And yet AI was able to take the words and actually produce a pretty good image. And if you say, what about photorealistic style? You get a very different image. Pretty amazing. Let's try another example. This one is for you. If I asked you to imagine a rabbit detective sitting on a park bench, reading a newspaper in a Victorian setting. That's a challenging image for me to imagine. I can kind of do it, but this is better than my own imagination. AI is pretty good. And I'll give you one more example. Try this yourself. A bowl of soup that looks like a monster knitted out of wool. Can you imagine that? I can't even imagine what that would look like. And yet AI gives us this, a bowl of soup that looks like a monster knitted out of wool. I think this is crazy. This is creative. This is innovative. This is genius. And these pictures look pretty good. Since then, AI for images has evolved. These are some from a program called Midjourney. They're beautiful with light and reflection. They look realistic. Even the people look realistic. They used to have a problem generating the right number of fingers. Now AI is starting to solve that. So with all of this artificial intelligence, I was watching and watching, but in December 2022, when ChatGPT came out, that's when my brain melted. I could not believe how exciting and powerful this technology was. And many other people noticed as well. In just 5 days, ChatGPT received 1 million users. And in just less than 2 months, 100 million users were using the technology. If you compare that with many other technologies like Instagram or Facebook, much slower adoption. This is the fastest adopted technology in history. So one thing to know is that technology keeps moving forward. GPT-3, which we saw in June 2020, had what's called a certain number of parameters. It had 175 billion parameters. Think of this as the memory or the computation or the brain size. And then just a few years later, GPT-4 emerged with 100 trillion parameters, some are estimating. So much bigger. If this was the brain of GPT-3, this is the brain of GPT-4. And the brain is not just bigger, it's getting smarter and smarter. So they did a comparison on the 3.5 version, that's ChatGPT here, that came out in December, and the 4.0 version, which came out in March, just 4 months later. And they took human-level exams, the same exams that if you were a student here in America, you would have to take these exams to get into school or to become a doctor or a lawyer. And look at the difference between version 3 and 4, this amount of evolution. So in America, if you're going to become a lawyer, you must pass a bar exam. Version 3.5 scored only 10%, meaning it beat 10% of the candidates who applied and took the exam. But version 4.0, just a few months later, was able to get to 90%. It's better than 90% of the people who studied and took the bar exam. The LSAT, which is, again, applying to law school, went from 40% to 80%. SAT is a college entrance exam in math from 70% to 89%, beating 89% of the candidates. GRE verbal, 63 to 99%. That's better than I did on my GREs. To go to graduate school, you need to take a GRE to have a master's or PhD. A machine is doing better on entrance exams than I am, and additional, more tests. Here's even an example. A sommelier is a wine expert. So to become a wine expert, you need to pass a test. GPT-4 was able to beat 86% of wine experts studying and taking this test. So as technology evolves and these machines get smarter and smarter at human level exams, where is this going? In 2005, Ray Kurzweil wrote a book called The Singularity is Near, and he said that by 2029, computers will become more generally intelligent than humans. We will no longer be the most intelligent species on this planet. And that's a pretty scary statement. Luckily, for us, for humanity, I think, AI is improving, it is getting smarter, but it has a different kind of intelligence than humans. Humans are adaptable. Humans are creative in a way that today AI is not. And humans live. They have a consciousness, they have goals, they have kindness, they have emotions, they touch things and feel things in the world. AI can't do any of that. It may be able to write a better love poem than I can, but my wife is not going to care. She wants something that comes from a human, that comes from me. And before we get too scared of AI, let me show you this example. This is the latest model, the smartest model AI has trained so far. If I ask how many words does this question plus your answer total or sum up to? GPT answers, this question contains 12 words. Including this answer, the total word count is 17. You're like, amazing. But it's wrong. If you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you'll see the question has 10 words. The answer has 15 words. The total words are 25, 10 plus 15. So if GPT is so intelligent, why can't it even answer such a simple question? AI is not yet more intelligent than all of humanity. Now, let's just talk about where I think AI is going very quickly. These are requirements I set 10 years ago. And we can say, does AI reach this goal? I said, in order for an AI to become truly important, it needs 4 things. It needs to be one assistant. I need to be able to just talk to it. So I want to know this and I want to do that. GPT is kind of like that. These large language models give that. So good score. But I want to be able to do it from any device, talking to my watch and a phone on a TV, in my car, on a refrigerator. So far, GPT is only really a web technology. You can't be driving your car and interact with it. It needs to be open and powered by every service. Right now, GPT is just a big trained set of data from the web and other sources, but it's not live, it's not open, it's not able to do things. And then finally, I think this conversational assistant must be personalized. I have certain interests, I have certain skills, and that should be adapted. And I don't think on these 3 areas, GPT does not score well. So that's still opportunity for you. Just drilling into that a little bit more, I want an assistant that can both know things and do things. But these are very they're very different architectures that you need to create. So Google and GPT, ChatGPT, are on the knowing side. They have a lot of data, mostly unstructured, that they can do retrieval or simple inference or summarization over. But they cannot access live data, live calls. I want to buy tickets. I want to make reservations. So the doing side of web service calls, structured data, transactions, being able to compose complex requests. GPT can do this today, but not this. And ultimately, we want all of it together. Some recent exciting areas, GPT came out with plugins to try to add some doing capability, but it's very primitive. It needs a lot of work. And another area that you can look at if you're interested in learning about this technology is something called AutoGPT. This is a small program that you can give a high-level request to GPT. It'll break it into subtasks and start figuring out and executing all of the subtasks. One of the things that it does as part of that, which is very interesting, is that as it generates what to do next, it asks for its reasoning, its research, its critique, and its next action. And so just by asking, tell me what to do next and tell me why this is not a good idea, this actually improves the overall behavior of the system. One wouldn't think that having it explain or critique its results to itself would improve its results, but it does. This is a very exciting research result. So as we come to it, we've seen AI is very useful in many domains. It's powerful. There's still a lot to do, but the biggest areas are trust. We saw that the technology is not based on accuracy, doesn't always predict the right thing. It's trying to create stories that are entertaining, but not necessarily true. Well, that's a real problem for many applications. Like if you asked it, how much medicine should I take? You want an accurate answer. You don't want a nice sounding answer. So accuracy is a big problem. Transparency is a problem. We don't know how AI came up with its answers. And you can ask it, you say, explain how you gave me that last answer, and it will, and it'll sound great. But then you hit the refresh button and it'll give you another answer, a different answer, and then another different answer. And you're like, wait, these all can't be true. How do I trust you? Are you just telling me things because I want to hear it? Or are you telling me real how you did it? And of course, the answer is it's telling me what I want to hear, not actual transparency on how it executes. And finally, I think authentic human experience will become increasingly important. I gave the example of my wife not caring about an AI love poem. She wants something that comes from my heart, my feelings. And as it becomes more difficult to tell what is AI and what is really human, that will be something that we need to be able to mark and understand and say, this is a human result. And I think we will come to value that more and more in the age of AI. So that's the end of my talk. The main takeaways are that conversational AI is here. It's rapidly improving, getting better and better, and it will be as important as the internet, as mobile, as the computer itself. This is important. It'll impact education. It will impact, how you learn, how you teach. It'll impact how you do business, even how you create works of art. So it will be important, but it's still in early days. The areas that we need work, maybe your help figuring out the answer. We need to get better on the doing side that can access live APIs, can execute tasks. And we need a lot of work on everything related to trust, the accuracy, transparency, and how to understand authentic human experience. So hopefully that's an introductory lecture on the rise of conversational AI. It's an exciting field. I think you will love working in it, and it's going to be very important in our society and going forward. So thank you very much.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
you. Thank you. Have a great talk. I'm very interested in your talk.
Thank you very much.
Actually, my PhD topic is speech recognition, but it's related like a HMM based.
Yes.
So, but I'm very interested in the Siri story.
Thank you.
I have one question about Siri and development of Siri. So the first prototype of Siri is I forget 1994, 5 years.
Yeah, 1993.
30
years ago this month. 30 years ago this month.
Why you keep the technology in 18 years? I mean, 2007 it's launched. So why you keep the technique so long time?
Yeah. Thank you so much for your question. So my first version of Siri, the idea for Siri came to me in 1993. And this was the year before I saw a web browser. At the time, all of our computing was on our own computer. We would use floppy disks and CD-ROMs, and we would put programs on our machine, and then we would use them. And I said, someday, there will be content and services around the world that we want to access, and we'll need an interface where we can discover those services and then use them, interact with them. So I never thought about the web or hyperlinks. I thought everyone would have an assistant, and you could say, I want to know this or I want to do that. And the assistant's job would be to understand your request and with speech and language understanding, to route it to the right machines around the world, and then present the results, learn, and then help the user get the job done. So that was my original vision in 1993. I had a tablet PC, kind of like an iPad, and I could use a pen, I could use speech recognition, and I could do tasks for many services running on different machines. And as new services came online, now what I could do was bigger and bigger and bigger. So that was the original vision. But if I had started this as a company, anytime before 2007, I think it would have failed. And if I had started it much later, I think the company would have failed. So what I've done well, I think in this case, was the timing is so important. And I've done that many times. So I say that Siri was the first virtual assistant, but there were many afterwards. I started a company called change.org, which is the first social network for social activism with petitions. We have 500 million members, but it was the first social network. There were many afterwards. And I also started one of the first machine learning companies in the cloud. There are many, many afterwards. So how do you do timing? How do you know when it's the right time to take an idea as a company, as a startup? What I do is I make predictions about where the world is going. And there's still many questions like, is Bitcoin and cryptocurrency going to be everywhere, take over money, or is augmented reality going to replace everything? We don't need screens anymore. All of these questions, I did research and I made predictions. I think that the world will go this way. I think this will happen. And then I look for events, which I call a trigger moment. And when I see a trigger that confirms a prediction, I now know it's time. So in this case, it was the iPhone. I had been waiting for the iPhone. And when I saw it in 2007, many people said, oh, the iPhone will fail. Why? Because Apple they make a music player. That's so simple. Phones are complicated. Apple will never succeed. I had been waiting, and when I saw it, I said, oh, I've predicted this. I know it would happen. I know it will be successful. So in 2 years from now, every competitor in the phone industry will want to beat Apple because Apple is just one. The iPhone was so much better than everything that existed. So I said, what are the problems of the iPhone? Well, the screen is small, it's hard to type, and it was very slow network. So if you clicked on a web link, it might take a minute round trip. So if I had to buy something, maybe 10 clicks, that's 10 minutes, too much. So I said, what if I took this Siri idea I've had for 17, 18 years? That solves these problems because you don't have to type, the screen can be small, and in one round trip, you say, get me tickets to the concert tonight, and it comes back and says, just confirm, then I'm done, right? One step, not 10 steps. And so that's when I knew, because I had been making a prediction, I saw the trigger moment, the iPhone coming, I go, oh, this is going to be huge. And I looked forward to say, what will the world need 2 years from now? I'm going to start a company to build that. And so that's why I think Siri was successful. I did the same thing for change.org, for Sentient. This is something your students can try. They can ask questions about the world, where is it going, and make predictions, and then look for those trigger moments where you say, now I know I'm going to start a company.
I see. Very interesting. Additionally, I have a question. So embedding with iPhone. So I mean, Siri, when Siri combine to iPhone, what is the most difficult point? I mean, technically.
Yeah. So in the beginning, we had a prototype, and it worked very well on small number of vocabulary. But then we wanted to be able to have restaurants and concerts. And so we loaded in millions and millions, tens of millions of vocabulary words. So every city in the United States, every business in the United States, every music group in the United States or in the world. And I realized that every word in English is the name of a city, the name of a business. It was crazy. And the ambiguities exploded. So if I say in English, I book a 4-star restaurant in Boston, that's pretty clear because you say, oh, I want to make a reservation in Boston. But Boston is a city, but there are 13 Bostons in the United States. So which Boston am I talking about? And star, I said 4-star restaurant. Star is a city in the United States. And book is a city in the United States. So which is the city I'm talking about? And star restaurant is the name of a restaurant. But I'm not talking about a restaurant name. The ambiguities of all the meanings of all these words combine. And it was so hard to get Siri to come to understand again with all of that data. That was the hardest technical challenge we had to face. It was working great. It was working great. We put in 30 million business names. It didn't understand anything. And I'm like, what just happened? And we had to climb back out and get performance and accuracy to work with that context.
I see. I can imagine that problem easily.
Yes.
Do you think that problem is completely clear now? I mean, that this problem is already completed.
Completed?
Not yet.
No, it's, language, humans are so smart, and we instantly understand meaning. However, the generative AI and large language models are a huge, important step forward. Their ability to understand language is so much beyond what we did. It's only 10, 15 years ago, but the ability to understand the meaning and the nuances, the little differences in language, I think are brilliant. I said to ChatGPT, so this weekend, I'm going to celebrate my 25th wedding anniversary with my wife, and we're going to take a trip. So I said to ChatGPT, help me plan a trip for my anniversary. I want to go from here to here in this many days. And it came back and it said, congratulations on your anniversary. And I'm like, how did it know to say that? Right? You only say that for an anniversary. If I said I want to take a business trip, it wouldn't say congratulations on your business. No, it knew the nuance of what a human might say. So it not only understood my request, it knew all of these little extra subtleties, and that was not possible with the technology that we did then. So we're getting much closer, but I don't think even now it's finished or completed. There's more work to do.
Yeah, thank you. So next, so I understand recently that ChatGPT or GPT related techniques helps spoken AI. And what is the key challenging to the next generation of voice spoken AI?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we could talk for a long time about this. I tried in my talk to give some answers of where AI is great and surprisingly good, but also some examples of where it's not good today and needs more work. So I would say in the future, as I said 30 years ago, I want an assistant who can know things and do things. I want to say, I want to know this, or I want to do that. And the two should fit together. Today, we don't have one system that can do both. And the technologies are quite different. So it's getting pretty good on the knowing side, having lots of facts and being able to summarize or answer based on those facts. But being able to execute tasks with side effects and transactions, it's not good at all at that. We don't have a system. So that's one area. I think the trust is a really big issue. right? You want to apply them everywhere in every domain, education, transportation, agriculture. It can be used for everything. But if you need to trust it, if you need the answer that it comes back with to be right, which, medical, with many of these domains, you want an accurate answer. If you can't get an accurate answer or be sure of an accurate answer, or at least get an explanation, like humans will say, I know this is true, or I kind of think this is true, or this might be true, but I'm not sure. These technologies don't do that at all. You saw in my example, it said, your question has 12 words and the answer combined with the answer, it's 17. And it was so confident, but it was wrong. I'm like, no, I can count the words. It's not right. So for me, I think the future of this technology and where it evolves, we need to solve some of these issues. We need to get to live data. We need to make things trustworthy and transparent and explainable, or else it really won't be fully useful and fully utilized in all the areas we would want to use it.
Yeah, thank you. My recently I work on speaker recognition. So you picked up the personality topics finally. So I'm very interested in future. So, but recently the privacy issue is also raised. So, but how do you think speech data should be changed to for example, face data, many company can't track. So
Yeah.
speech data is also changed to treat in future. So
yes, it's as you know from your work on speech recognition and personalization and speech identification, you need data to be able to produce results. You need data, right? And even Siri, we could not have done the speech recognition if someone had not shared the data so that we can learn how do people sound. And often it used to be a problem that we didn't have enough data to do a good speech recognizer. But once Siri came out and everyone started using it with different accents from different countries and regions, now for the first time the data was available. However, privacy is an issue for these systems. And there was, when Siri launched from Apple, many people were very, very nervous. They said, hey, maybe it's listening in my house and they're hearing things that I don't want them to hear. Maybe I didn't talk to it, but it's listening anyway. So the first thing I think is most important. So we need data from some people or we can improve the system. But we also want to protect user privacy. The most important one is, as best as possible, first you need to ask, do you want to share your audio or your data so that you can improve a system? And let some users will say yes, some users will say no, but you must allow them to ask. The second thing you must do is you must allow them to change their mind. So being able to give them transparency and control, like control and say, I've changed my mind, I erase all of my data that you have for me. I think that's very important. And then the third thing is you as best as possible, you want to only listen when the user is talking right to the system. You don't want it listening just all the time, for instance. Because people are not comfortable with that. One thing that has helped a lot is that speech recognition now used to be in the cloud, in the servers. So you had to send the audio to the cloud for processing. And that cloud was owned by a company. Now it's better because most speech recognition is moving to the device, moving to the phone itself. So if I have a phone and I talk to it, the phone hears it, but no one else does. So I think that helps privacy a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it is very difficult problem. So how to keep the privacy and how to improve the technology. So
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. So this lecture is for students. So I'd like to ask you for students. So what key considerations should the student be mindful of when using or developing AI?
Yeah, I think for me, the most important thing that I learned as a student, and the most important lesson I want to share to students is to be curious and follow your passion. So many times, things that I'm proud of, whether it's in AI or other things, did not happen because someone asked me to do it. It wasn't my job. It wasn't my classwork. I did it because I was interested and passionate about it and curious about it. And everything I'm proud of in my life started that way. So no one said, I need you to build a voice recognition agent that will do this. I need you to build a Siri. No one said that to me. But in 1993, I go, wouldn't it be cool if you could access information on if you just by talking, you could access services around the world. Wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be interesting? I think it would be nice. And so I was building and playing and being curious. And for me, that's the number one lesson, because oftentimes our students here in America, and maybe it's similar in Japan, they only do what a teacher asks them to do. Teacher says, in order to get a good grade in my class, you must do A and B and C. And I'm like, yes, you should do A and B and C. But also find time and allow yourself to explore outside, to do the D, the thing that you care about, that no one else is asking you about, because that's where I think true success lies. And so whether it's developing AI, do AI because it's fun, build things with it, create things with it, be curious, try things, fail, succeed. And that's where you'll find your way.
Thank you. I can understand you still continue to having curiosity and passion.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And additionally, recently, so AI has really exploded in the last decade. So what are same example of AI application that really surprised you?
Yeah, so I tried to give some of those in my talk as well.
Yeah.
So things, I say that in the last 10 years, AI did things that I never thought I would see in my lifetime. And I think that's so crazy how I've been working professionally since the 80s, mid 80s. And, you see AI get better and better, and you think you understand, and then it takes off. So examples are things like in my talk, when Jeopardy, was beaten by a machine. I'm like, wow, when I could drive, a car starts driving by itself. These for me are wonderful examples that I never thought I would see in my lifetime. And with ChatGPT, I would play with it and I go, oh, it just predicts words. It doesn't understand the words. But the moment that surprised me more than anything, I think, was when I was writing a program. I said, ChatGPT, write a program to do some function. And it did. It did a very nice job. But I go, oh, it's probably seen that before. And so I tried it. I pushed and I said, you made a mistake. This should be true. and it said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And then it changed the program to make it come true. And I go, it not only wrote words, but it understood them. And that for me is something that completely surprised me. I did not think AI could really understand a program, let alone our world, let alone those nuances that it would say, "Congratulations on your anniversary." How did it know that? It understands how we react, how we think. It has a model of what's appropriate for an anniversary and what's appropriate. Where did that come from? That level of understanding is what really surprised me most.
Oh, thank you. It's the final question. What do you think the next big wave of computing application will be after generating AI?
Oh,
It's a
great
difficult
question.
question.
Yeah, thank you. So I gave you that example of 10 plus in my talk. So first we had the mouse and Windows, and then 10 plus 1 years later, 11 years later, we had the web. And then 10 plus 2 years later, we had the smartphone and the app store. 10 plus 3 years later, we have generative AI. So for me, my prediction is that in 10 plus 4 years, so 2035, we will have the next major interface paradigm that will surprise us and change everything. And I think it will be augmented reality. So we saw recently Apple and Meta and some other companies come out with glasses that were not virtual. Virtual, I think, is niche. It's for gamers and, it's good. But for regular people to use it, I think we want to be in our world mostly, but we want to be able to see and do new things in the world, right? And augmented reality, I think, can be that. So we've recently come out with new headsets. Apple had one. Those are prototypes. Those are like Siri was 10 years ago, 12 years ago. But ChatGPT, now we're talking. I can ask it anything and it'll give me a pretty good answer, right? Much more advanced than Siri. And I created Siri, so I can say that. I think that the augmented reality displays of today are just the prototype. And in 2035, with new battery technology, with new headset or contact lens technology, I think we'll be living in yet another new exciting world. So that's my prediction.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking for coming the next new technology.
Nice. Wonderful.
Okay,
Okay. Thank
thank
you,
you very
Dr.
much
Shiota.
to a great talk.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you.
Yeah, me too.